Hello and welcome to another podcast of The Odd Couple. This is Siddharth here.
And I'm Dr. Sheesh.
Hello guys, today we have a very special guest, Kashyap Chandrasekhar. Well, he's just not another Tambram engineer, but with a slight twist. New Zealand instead of California and robotics instead of software engineering. He has spent the last 15 years building robots, from robot vacuum cleaners in the home to driverless forklifts in the warehouse. Currently, he's the head of advanced robotics at Dyson, building robots for the future homes. Welcome to the Odd Couple podcast, Kechi, and that's what we call him. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Great to be on the show.
Superb. So Kechi, can I start the show off by asking you, how did you figure? No, I'm just kidding.
Not
kidding.
the same.
We all know how you got into robotics. You did ECC or what is that, electronics in your college, and you became a robotics specialist. But the question we have here for you is about AI and Elon Musk coming out and saying that AI can actually dominate the world at one period of time, and we should be careful about what we're creating. And so the quintessential question is going to be, do you think that's really possible? Because I think we're very far away from doing that.
So that's a good question, actually. And it depends on, it's still, the jury is out on whether AI is really dangerous. I mean, the truth is today, there's two distinct things. There's AI that's designed to do a specific task, and then there's general AI, right? General AI is like, has consciousness like human beings, can take what it's learned from one circumstance and apply it in a completely new circumstance. So that's something that AI is far from doing today. So today, all it does is recognize patterns in data, takes decisions maybe based on those patterns, and maybe infer from sensors like cameras, to feed into that. But it's quite limited in that sense. It's really mostly basing its knowledge on what you've taught it. And it's not proven to apply itself more generically to new cases, if that makes sense.
So there's no way that Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to come like a robot and attack us and destroy all of mankind. That's not going to happen.
So the question is, if these tools are in the hands of people with malicious intent, then is it dangerous? I'm starting to sound like an American saying it's not the gun, it's the person holding the gun. I hope we don't have a big American audience for this show.
We actually do. But talking about this artificial intelligence and robotics and the pace at which this particular technology is actually going through an evolution, right? Exponential kind of a growth. And since you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of stimulus that the robot or the system takes, either through cameras or sensors, and it reacts to it from a particular data set. But given how little we know about our own minds, can we expect to intentionally create an artificial consciousness? I don't know if I'm making sense, but we hardly understand ourselves. How are we going to create something and expect them to do better?
So that's the first point. I don't think it'll be better than human beings. That's what I'm saying. It can be really good at doing something very specific. So, for example, there's AI for editing audio and video. So when we do this talk, at the end of it, if you fed AI hours of footage before and after, it can pick up on cues, content, language, pause, laughter, and actually edit and automatically deliver the output, which you would think it requires a lot of skill and subtlety, right? Can you define editing in a set of rules? It's quite a bit of artistic touch to it. And you probably can't just show. So robots are very good at identifying patterns that we can't necessarily consciously describe. And this is just because of technology, like deep learning has reached a point where, you can have millions and millions of layers, much like your neurons, right? You build a neural network and they're able to encode these relationships, a high degree of complexity, and sort of, in the end, match the patterns, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's great at doing specific tasks, but not multitasking across a whole gamut of things, is what you're trying to say. And that is the current generation of AI where we at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more people are looking at AI as, it's not used to replace humans. It's a tool that you use along with a human. So if you see you have a problem, AI is good for some things, humans are good for some things, but together, they're a resource pool to do the job the best. So a person trying to do harm with AI can be dangerous, together.
I mean, the way I see it now, Ketch, it's that we got one angle, which I think Sid is talking about, which is the moral angle of using AI and how it's going to work. The other angle, which I think, which we should talk about or touch base about, is actually the capability which we have with just the necessary hardware or software, using AI, and are we there yet? With our capability of using the hardware, forget the moral angle or the codes by which it's going to work. That, like you said, it depends on who's pulling the trigger, right? And what parameters we're going to use and these machines are going to run. But if we take the hardware and software capability, are we even close to coming to something like, I mean, we use the word AI, like artificial intelligence, but it's not real artificial intelligence in its purest form. It's like what you said, we're just giving the software a certain task to pull out, and it's good at doing that. But the minute we start bringing complexities, like even a simple thing of choosing the fastest route from one point to the other point. Now, if I tell AI to plot out something, it would have like 30 or 40 different options for me, right? And probably a human might just look at it and say, actually, you just need to go from here to there. It might not be the most optimal, but it works fine. So the minute we start throwing in complex actions, AI probably is not at that phase right now, is what I think. So I'd like you to give us a little bit more of an insight as to the capability which we have right now and what the future is going to hold.
Actually, arguably, AI is proven to be better than human beings in certain complex tasks. So I'll give you an example. And this is a problem that Elon Musk did, I think. He said the problem with the world is the smartest brains are trying to make you click on the right thing. You're not doing it. So if you look at AI being able to detect what people do before they purchase something, or to be able to preempt someone from deleting their account, they're much better than a human could be. They take in all these cues, vast amounts of data, and make decisions, predict what's going to happen much better than humans tend to do. So when designed to do a specific task, and the task needs to have a lot of clear definition of success and failure, right? So lots of data, this is good, this is bad. If you have lots of that, it can do much better than a human can. Probably add, you think you find the best route, but with enough data, AI is probably going to kick your ass pretty quick because it's just computing, So that's why it's powerful. But where does it add? I mean, what happened, I think, is about roughly maybe 15 years back. Basically, technology with Hadoop and big data, you hear it as big data, technology enabling big data just took the problem and said, so if you're trying to identify patterns, they said just throw processing power at it, parallel processing, multiple chains of data. And deep learning as a concept completely said, you don't need these mathematical geniuses anymore. Just shove all this data and start plugging these different things together and let the computer work it out. Of course, the deep learning frameworks themselves are quite mathematical inside, but it's really changed the way you go about solving a complex relationship problem.
So just for the average listener who might not know what deep learning is my understanding right? When you say deep learning is something like, I heard somebody reference it to like, when you have a child and a child is taking in so much of input through its eyes, it's actually growing and assimilating all this information which it's getting. So when you say deep learning, is it like that where you're teaching the machine like a child and layering its consciousness or its information that you gather in this much information and then you learn from that, and then another layer comes in saying that okay, you've learned. Is that what deep learning is?
So when you talk about children, actually there's a class of learning called reinforcement learning, which is completely, most of this is inspired from people, right, and how we do things. So reinforcement learning, as you can imagine, I think is a concept that started in psychiatry or psychology, child rearing, right, where basically, you say, don't do this a few times, the child eventually learns. And that's what's used with wherever you're teaching a robot to try something in the world and then make a mistake and then learn that it's bad, use things like reinforcement learning. We're actively affecting the environment in the process. Reinforcement learning is used as a way to say, bad robot, you didn't achieve your goal, try again. But back to deep learning. Deep learning, the concept is, it's really a network of neurons, right? So you have millions of layers of neurons basically connected together and weights on all these connections. So the multiplication factors in each of these connections. What deep learning has done because of compute power and what's possible today with hardware and software is breaking that down to really simple representation of things. So if you take images, the low-level features you're relating are simple lines or gray-black shades. It takes this complex scene and then it'll break it down to those low-level features that can now be encoded in a high degree of complexity. So effectively, you take a really complex thing and break it down to simple chunks and just make all these connections. So I think it's the depth of those layers is what we call deep learning. I mean, do humans do it in our brains? Maybe we do. I mean, in a way, right? How humans process visual data. I mean, you might know this better, Ashish. It's quite interesting how we focus in on some information and ignore the rest quite selectively. So the brain is a good part of filtering the data coming through.
Yeah, generally our brain does filter in what it wants and filters out a lot of stuff, so yeah. Some of the background noise is lost, so yeah, so a lot of computing is done there. And I understand what you're trying to say.
So this is amazing because, and something which Ashish mentioned earlier, which was, is Terminator a possibility and these guys going rogue? Before we get to that particular more interesting Hollywood angle to it, I want to know is there a difference between, how do cyborgs differ?
So what is a cyborg? Like a humanoid robot? Is that what you mean by cyborg?
Yeah.
I would think that's what. It's basically using our intelligence and enhancing it with artificial, stuff. So I don't think Terminator is a cyborg. Terminator is a robot, and a cyborg is RoboCop, where the brain is human and
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
He's enhanced by
Sorry.
That is something which I think Elon Musk is talking about, right? Neuralink, etc., is where you're linking in the external stuff with our brain and harnessing the power of our engine and optimizing your world.
Yeah, I mean the technology and robotics used for exoskeletons and actually improving quality of life is a real thing, and there's a good chance that we will have access to technology that's going to make our old age years very different. Like my grandmom can barely sit and stand, and she's struggling. Wheelchair is still, the kind of tech you have today. You can walk even if your legs don't work.
Very surprisingly, I just attended a little show and tell from this certain Indian company who's actually building these harnesses, which gives us an exoskeleton. And they put you in this exoskeleton, and all these people who have been paralyzed, they put you in this exoskeleton, which then helps you walk. And then they give you these virtual goggles. And so you use that, and you try to use your brains and stimulate hitting these targets inside. It's amazing what they're trying to do to trigger neurons and try to to instill firing within your dead neurons. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised that they came to us to tell us that this type of stuff is existing, and would you be interested in working with us, right, to with our patients who are immobile and get them off the bed and stuff like that. So it is being developed, and it's really great. That can really improve life.
So the important thing there is, again, the Hollywood and media talk about robots taking over the world. This is where the magic is. When you use technology to change your quality of life, that's the people who can figure that out really impact change. Like it's stuff like what you just described. Can you trigger sensory responses and get neural connections because your robot can help you do that? I think it's the same with AI. It's the magic of using people and robots together to improve the solution.
Okay, on that positive note, we'll be back.
You're listening to the Odd Couple Podcast. Odd Couple Podcast. A Pandemia Inc. production.
Are you ready?
A friendly fireside chat with friends where no topic is beyond a healthy discussion, punctuated with a laugh or two.
Check it out!
Tune in every fortnight on your favorite podcast network.
Welcome back, and with us we have Kashyap Chandrasekhar, and he's taking us through this weird world of robotics and AI, and we're trying to wrap our heads around it. And Kashyap, another point which I wanted to talk about was when we were talking about AI and the medical field and stuff like that. There's also a new drive which is happening, especially in the field of radiology, and it's showing amazing results, more than any other field in medicine, where we are teaching AI to go through all these X-rays when it comes to like cancer and tuberculosis and other things which are there in the lungs. very often there's a lot of observer bias which happens, and, we tend to get things wrong. But what they found with AI, where it's really working in the medical field, is that they're able to punch in all these parameters, and AI is picking up things much, much earlier than a human would observe these changes and identify it as the right diagnosis. So that is one field where it's actually really working in medicine. So when we're talking about AI, this is one thing which I wanted to tell you about.
The big one is likelihood of drug trials succeeding. AI can save you billions by predicting if your likelihood of passing a certain drug trial, but from data, from past history. And I think it's got immense value in certain use cases. But yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think if diagnosing something is a lot of experience going with it, and whether we can democratize, crowdsource it to anybody and everybody is debatable.
So this is the amazing leaps that AI has made in the whole medical industry, right? Or healthcare, if you want to call it. But Kechi, you are the head of advanced robotics at Dyson, who makes these really cool vacuum cleaners and these bladeless fans and some really, really, really expensive stuff in India. But no, but in India it's extra expensive. But anyways, what I want to know is what are the cool things that's happening on that front? We have a lot of IoT devices right now, where just by talking to Alexa, she switches on my geyser, switches off my geyser, turns on the fan, adjusts the AC, XYZ. I mean, that's all IoTs, right? So when it comes, what is the future? What are the cool things that normally we used to see in Discovery Channel saying that, a compact disc is coming and soon enough and all that. So what's the future looking like?
That's a good question. You got to be a little careful on this one, because, I'm probably biased to how we are thinking about it. But I mean, the future of the home, there are, iRobot has sold over 20 million robot vacuum cleaners, right? There's so many brands even in India now. I think that's sort of reached a point where having a robot in your house isn't novelty anymore. You think about all the chores you do in the house, from vacuuming to everything, progressively robots can help you with all of those things. What you talked about, the connected devices, connected appliances. I think your robot vacuum cleaners now, the Roomba, what it can do is it knows when you're out of the house and it cleans, or you can say, Roomba, clean under the table, and it knows where your table is and it goes under and cleans. So it's sort of got a semantic understanding of your house, and you can talk to it. And
right.
Yeah, I think that there's two dimensions. The connected nature of all these devices, plus the human-machine interaction has evolved to be so transparent. As conversational AI has become so good that you can interact with these devices quite seamlessly. What does it mean for us? I don't know. Your house, you probably have robots all over your house doing different things.
But for me, more than this, the future stuff, when I listen to this, what we're doing now, like what you said, tell Alexa, switch on the TV, turn my geyser on, is there a carton of milk in my fridge, etc. All this I've seen in documentaries back in 1950s and 60s, where they used to have these shows where there used to be the House of Tomorrow, and the House of Tomorrow was shown as this thing by 1990 we'd have this whole connected house, and I'm looking like, okay, this was 1960, we're in 2020, and we're just getting there to Alexa, tell me a joke please, and then tells you a crappy joke. So we're so far away, man, the way I look at it, and then you have people like Elon Musk who comes in and says that, AI can, take over the world one day, and you have whole, Hollywood, singing along the same lines. For me, all that's so far-fetched, and I really don't see that happening. I think my concerns are more real with the fact of, is AI going to take my job away? Probably, how we machinized everything in factory building, that a lot of people lost their jobs. So will AI probably switch over and take people's jobs is what I'm more concerned.
Yeah, no, the loss of jobs is it's a highly, there's a lot of discussion on the topic actually. It creates a lot of new jobs for a start.
Yeah.
And it creates higher value jobs. It generally improves efficiency and overall. So it creates more opportunity to do new things. It creates more, money for investment in new things, and it spurs the economy, so to speak. So there's a lot of positive outcome that eventually helps people.
I think that's a good point you made. Like for me, an example of that was when email came. I think a lot of postal workers lost their jobs because of digital emails. But when Amazon came along and made, the whole delivery system, the whole logistics had to be created for it. Now you had AI which is running and buying all your stuff, but you still needed the logistics to deliver all that, and that created a whole ton and job. So I understand what you're saying, that you get much more high skill level jobs opening up, and I guess that's the way we will progress. So that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a lot of analysis on the type of jobs that are more likely to be replaced by AI and the kind of jobs it will create and so on. So, I mean, it's a subject that can be looked into quite deeply. But it's fundamentally speaking, it's not. It's we have to advance as a race. I think to think that it's that they'll take over your job is really. I mean, we can't afford to think that way. And back to the thinking that humans and machines have to work together. It's not to replace us. It's to work with us, because they can't do things that we can do, but they can do other things really well.
So, Kechi, you kept saying that there are certain things they're good at and certain things they're not good at. So, what are the things that they're not good at?
Well, they're not good at taking what they've learned and applying it in new context. So, general AI, so to speak, or even general robots that do a specific task. Typically, we call it anything that's dull, dirty, or dangerous. Right? Robots are good for those things. And if it's not any of these things, but it's more generic, they struggle. So, imagine a home and a robot doing things around your house. I mean, there's just so much context. Like if I'm trying to move something around my table, there's so much information here that I have in making those decisions. It's extremely complex to think about.
Yeah, so just imagine you move your table one day and then Roomba is set out. It has to go map the whole area all over again, right? All its learning went out. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds me of a very bad politically incorrect joke of how Ray Charles' parents used to punish him when he was young.
Move the furniture.
Rearrange the furniture, it seems. For those who didn't get the joke, Ray Charles is a blind musician, so he couldn't see. Yeah. So on that note, on that very weird note, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Odd Couple Podcast. Odd Couple Podcast, a Pandemia Inc. production.
Are you ready?
A friendly fireside chat with friends where no topic is beyond a healthy discussion, punctuated with a laugh or two. Check it out! Tune in every fortnight on your favorite podcast network.
And welcome back to the Odd Couple Podcast. We have Kashyap Chandrasekhar with us, who's the head of advanced robotics at Dyson. And Kashyap, you were just telling us how artificial intelligence is good at certain things and not so great at certain things. But from that perspective, how is it possible that these things, or what is the pronoun for artificial intelligence? I guess that's a whole new podcast by itself. But
yeah.
How do artificial intelligent things create great music or some killer art or even faces of people? I don't know. I don't understand that, but they create a lot of great content. So how does that? How's that intuition built into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to conversation earlier. It really knows what you've taught it. It's able to do mix and match things you've taught it, right? So it's, for example, you've seen some. I think it can take any picture and change it to sort of make it look like Van Gogh style painting, right? You can convert anything into Van Gogh style. So it can learn, again, it can learn patterns. You feed it a lot of some style of painting, and you say create an outcome. It's really good at merging things.
But have you heard any of this type of music set creaed by AI? You have?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Absolutely. Just go to YouTube. There's enough.
Is it any good?
It's great. It's like a full blown composition.
Shut up, really?
It's just not like what we used to do in Nokia. No, no, not like that. It's like I'm talking about full orchestra, everything.
Wow, man.
It's crazy. I mean, and the kind of art it kind of produces. I guess art is even a harder thing to do because music, you have 7 notes. There's a certain amount of music theory. There is a certain amount of what you call logic behind that, which AI can be taught. But when it comes to art, I feel it's very different because there's a visual perception, right? There's a magic of the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. And they say beauty is a verb. It's actually flows. So art is something which I'm still blown by. How are these things able to do it? And that's what excites me at the same time scares me.
But you make a good point. I mean, it's the question is, can the problem be broken down, and can you define what good music is through enough examples, millions of trance tracks, and then you say create one? I guess the robot's going to come.
Yeah,
with
there's so
something.
much bad music and bad artists out there that, you know, if a robot does something, I mean, even if it's really crap, there's some person to enjoy it. So I don't know, the parameters to describe whether it's great, not great, when it comes to art is very difficult. So
No, let me put this thing again, or rephrase it again. It's not about whether they make the art good or great, they make great music. The point is that you and me can't make great music or paint really well. But somebody can be trained so well, and the kind of output that you get is so superior, and that's what scares me, is what I meant, right?
Yeah.
How much the potential of what an AI can do, what we're talking about in 2021 and what it can do in 2025, the gap is going to be so vast, right? And that's what scares me. Soon we'll have, I mean, I'm sure the military is using AI extensively, right? Already we have drones, but the drones are, yes, it's controlled by a pilot on ground remotely sitting in some bunker. But they are trying to do completely autonomous drones, which will take a decision by itself whether it should
Engage or not
take
engage.
out a target or not. But my question over there is, when my phone autocorrects something and I send it out and it make a mistake like that, how can we depend on AI to make a moral call of whether to eliminate a target or not? That's my question.
I mean, there's a big dilemma, right? So, if you heard of that grandma or the baby, so people program. There's some programmer sitting in Silicon Valley programming a driverless car. So sometimes you have a choice. The car, we're going to hit a grandmother or a baby. Who decides? The guy who's programming, like some punk on Red Bull. So there's like, okay, baby today. It's like, so it's a really it's a good question. You're right about the speed. You're absolutely right. I mean, to one extent, Ashish was saying that AI is it's far not meeting our expectations of the world, and they're not actually very good in entering our world and doing things the way we do.
correct.
Generically speaking, but they can be very good at something they're trained to do. So imagine, you think about COVID actually as an example, and how it spread. And we are obviously smart. We evolved. Vaccines came out. We took care of it slowly. But imagine if that was driven by a computer that was proactively trying to. So the scale and at which it can do things can be massive. So while humans can respond and eventually work it out, are they so far ahead in the damage they cause, and even in their limited focus, is a scary thought.
So I think that is what people are most scared of. That's why early on I tried to split it into two parts, which is one is the hardware, software of AI, and then talking about the morality of and the moral code which it's going to work by, right?
The ethics.
Yeah, the ethics by which AI is going to work by, and ultimately what Hollywood milks is the morality or the ethics, is the ethics which it milks, right? So the very example of COVID which you gave, now considering if we were in a world where now democracy has failed, communism has failed, and then you say, okay, here's AI which is absolutely fair across the board, let's give the world to AI and let it take care of us. And imagine something like COVID came in, it would probably lock us in forever until there were zero cases. But in reality that can't happen. But the code by which it would work to optimize survival or whatever would be that. So that those are the moral dilemmas which people worry about when you give such power to AI. So let's assume the software, the hardware reaches that stage, and like what you said, we are left with either the child or the tram filled with a lot of old people. Which one are you going to kill? That's what people can't wrap their brains about.
You're spot. I mean, you're spot on. Again, that's the thing. You don't leave AI in charge.
Correct.
Those sort of things. But there's also, it learns what you teach it. So there is some funny stories about, there's a picture of a congresswoman or something speaking, or a UN, and she's dressed in a suit. And if you took a head and feed it to AI, 9 times out of 10 it pictures her with a bikini. Because she's like a South American So I mean, it's not. It knows what it's been taught, right? That's all it sees on the internet.
I think it's. I think it speaks more about the programmer than what the programmer's browsing history is.
But it's true.
I get what you're trying to say.
But those biases are encoded. All these biases get passed on to these systems.
Yeah, but similarly, I came across this article which I think Google or Facebook was working with these two robots, and they put the two AI together, and one of those chatterboxes, right? So chatterbots. So they start talking, and within like the 6th or 7th line, they get onto a conversation about God, and are you God, and what is God, and stuff like that. Now we know that religion is our God, and stuff is such a difficult topic to wrap our heads around it. But here we have AI who hardly knows anything, but hits such questions, which can. Which sometimes you can't understand, and how much religion causes so much of chaos and war and etc. So again, right. I'm trying to reiterate that the fact that when we have put two chatterbots together, this is where they end up. So are we really ready to go down that road?
You're right. I mean, when AI fails, it fails dramatically, right? It's so obvious. It's just dumb. Yeah. It's just dumb, and it's something a human being would never do. But the scary thing is when it does succeed in doing something better than a human, even if it's a small example.
Correct.
And I think the trick is to harness it, not get worried about
Correct.
it. And that's where
I guess so. I mean, one of the last things which I like to say is that when I was watching this, was it Boston Dynamics, which had this really scary looking robots doing some really crazy stuff, climbing stairs and going for a walk in the park and stuff like that. But worst part, when I felt bad, somebody tried to kick it and it struggled and gained its balance.
Yeah.
For a second, I'm like, wow, it's amazing that it didn't lose its balance. But the other side, like, oh my God, that whole hurt factor, did it get hurt? So, will there be a future someday where we'll have people talking about robot rights and what can be done, should not be done, the liability of that?
Sidhu, we don't have that for our animals.
We don't have it for each other.
Don't do that to our animals over here. Please, that's just too far now. Okay, so Kechi, another thing which I want to ask you about is quantum computers, right? We're still with our binary computers and we're working on that. And we're pretty much reaching the hardware constraints, right, of miniaturizing things down to the smallest, right, trying to crunch these things. But when you've got quantum computers, you can really crunch massive numbers, right, all together. So you have any insights about quantum computers, what it is for our audience?
No, dude. I'll be honest with you. If I've met very few people who actually understand what quantum computing means, even in my line of work. Fundamentally, the fact that you can represent something in more than 1 0, right? Multiple states is the funda behind it. And you think about deep learning, and all of it is really about compute. Imagine how much more it can learn. What's happening in deep learning these days, guys are just saying, okay, let me try this. See what the computer learns. And they're just finding out this, like music.
Yeah.
This guy is trying to do this video editing software completely with AI and seeing how the quality is. And so there's some pretty incredible stuff that's possible, but when you scale the compute, I think, and the thing with some of these things is it's even hard to imagine what it means. Like you scale the compute power means all of a sudden a different set of problems are within reach.
Correct.
What are those problems, and what are they going to do? In what sequence are they going to impact the world? It's fascinating.
That's what I found really funny when somebody actually was describing what intelligence is. Like, when you say artificial intelligence, right? So you're like, the first question which you have to ask is that what is intelligence, right? Is it memorizing and remembering this is what intelligence is? Or, I am able to quickly access all this information and use it to carry out a function, And unless you can really identify what you are quantifying, it's very difficult for AI to actually function and do what it needs to do. Like, we take it for granted that intelligence might be, parameters such as the above, which is crunching things really fast, or having all of the. So for AI to take all of that information, assimilate it, and put it out, it's very, very, very difficult. And like what Kechi said, they're really good at either saying remember everything, or do it really fast, or really laying down those parameters for AI to to function through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they can do those things better than people. That's the other scary bit.
Yeah. So, Kechi, last question. Are you more optimistic or pessimistic about artificial intelligence technology and stuff like that? Just going forth, I mean, that's a space you're in. Optimistic, pessimistic, what's the scene?
To be honest, guys, I'm surrounded by such creative people who are blue sky thinking all the time. My job is to actually ground them to reality all the time. that's like, I hope no one in my company is. But really, I'd be like, okay, great, you can use AI, but can you just do it using like deterministic mathematics first, please? And to be honest, a lot of what we can, problems we need to solve doesn't require AI. What AI does, and this is, in robots, it's a whole different conversation, is it makes things faster. So what is really difficult to compute using traditional mathematics, using deep learning, you can crunch the compute down to something that's very fast. And speed is a huge part of robots not being where they are today. You can probably do many things, but very slowly. And as human beings, you can't stand around that stuff. You'll be like, to hell with this.
Right.
So I think AI has a place, but I think we have bigger problems to. There are certain problems that you have to use AI for, like cars on the road or some things in your house. But my view is it's a few years away, and it's going to be used targeting something very specific.
But just the sheer number of millennials out there who are all now, born with a computer, or a cell phone. I mean, children are coding and stuff when they are 4 and 5, man. I don't even know how to spell Python, and they're on that. And there's so much of stuff going around. So I just think we're probably in the golden age of computers right now. I mean, probably we thought we were in it, but no, just the number of people who are in it, programming and coding and stuff. I see great things around this in the future, stuff which is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the most important thing for us, being where we are, even in my line of work, like I said, I try to be practical, is it's actually important to keep an open mind and evolve. Professionally as well, all our professions are going to change potentially. Our lives are going to be touched by this tech. There's no doubt. We're going to be, in many ways, healthcare, at home, relationships, communicating with people, transport, all of that is going to change significantly. So we have to embrace it. Being a pessimist, it's important because you still trust your gut, and you look at the technology for where it should be used. But at the same time, we've all got to keep an open mind, because as we get older, I think we also become a little rely on what we think we understand and know. And sometimes machines can do stuff that surprise us, so like music.
Yep, interesting. Thank you so much, Kashyap. That was absolutely a new form, a new dimension that we kind of spoke about, and a peek into the future, what's possible, what's not, optimistic, pessimistic, and all angles. Guys, do follow Kashyap on his LinkedIn profile. He posts some really interesting stuff, and it's great to follow there. Is there any other place that you'd like to follow you, Kechi?
No, that's the end. No,
yeah,
none of those.
I figured. So we leave that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Kashyap, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. Actually, I'm kind of jealous because I'm kind of cursed with trying to get these machines to work every day. I really wish I didn't know this and I could just pontificate about the future without worrying about the details of it.
That's our job.
But no, it's fascinating. Yeah. You got me thinking about many things now.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much, Kechi. Thank you, Dr. Sheesh. And thank you guys for tuning into the Odd Couple podcast. See you guys soon.
Until then, bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.